What if I told you that every major event in modern history, wars, revolutions, economic collapses, wasn't just about power or politics, but about debt? What if debt isn't a burden, but a weapon, a silent tool used by the global elite to reshape nations, erase empires, and rewrite the pages of history itself? Because behind every economic crisis and every recovery plan, there's a hidden transaction, one that transfers control from the people to those who issue the credit. This is how global elites use debt to rewrite history. The origin of the debt machine long before digital money and global markets. Debt was simple: a farmer borrowing grain, a king borrowing gold. But in the 17th century, something revolutionary happened. Debt became institutionalized. In 1694, the Bank of England was born, not as a public institution, but as a private lender to the government. The deal was simple, but deadly brilliant. The crown could borrow limitless money to fund wars, but in return, it would tax its citizens to pay back that debt with interest. And that interest didn't flow to the nation, it flowed to the investors behind the bank. This was the birth of the central banking model, a system where nations became customers, and money creation became a private business. The power to print money was no longer in the hands of kings or people, but of financiers hidden behind a curtain of legitimacy. The rise, debt as a weapon. As empires expanded, so did their debts. Britain borrowed to dominate the seas. France borrowed to keep up. The United States borrowed to build its future. But the ones truly profiting were the lenders, the same elite families and institutions financing both sides of conflicts. During the Napoleonic Wars, private banking dynasties discovered something extraordinary. War was profitable. They would lend to nations at war, charge interest on both sides, and when peace came, it would own the reconstruction contracts, the new currencies, and even national assets. By the 19th century, entire countries were being redesigned through credit agreements. Railroads, factories, mines, all financed with borrowed money that would eventually return power to the financiers. Debt became the new empire, invisible but absolute. The breaking point. When debt replaced reality in 1913, a quiet meeting on Jekyll Island in the United States changed everything again. The Federal Reserve was created, another private central bank with public branding. And just like the Bank of England centuries earlier, it was designed to lend money, not to individuals, but to the government itself. When the Great Depression hit, millions lost everything but the financial elite. They consolidated. They bought real assets, land, gold, corporations, at a fraction of their real value. Fast forward to World War II, another wave of debt, another wave of profits. Entire nations borrowed from banks to build weapons, rebuild cities, and restart economies. And when the war ended, a new system was born. Bretton Woods, 1944, establishing the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. The same elites who controlled the issuance of money now controlled the global system itself. And when President Nixon ended the gold standard in 1971, money was no longer backed by anything real. It was backed by trust and debt. From that moment on, every dollar, every euro, every yen became a promise, not a product. A promise to repay something that no longer truly existed. The fallout. Nations in chains. Once the dollar became the world's anchor, the game changed forever. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank began issuing development loans to poor nations, but these weren't acts of charity. They were contracts of control. Countries in Africa, Asia, and South America borrowed billions to modernize, only to find themselves trapped in endless debt cycles. Their economies were restructured, their industries privatized, and their natural resources auctioned to foreign investors. The pattern repeated again and again. Debt gives default, gives dependency. And every bailout came with new conditions, new policies, new control. Entire regions lost sovereignty without a single bullet being fired. Meanwhile, in the developed world, debt became domestic policy. Governments borrowed endlessly to fund lifestyles, banks lent recklessly, and people learned to live inside a debt bubble, convinced it was prosperity. But prosperity built on credit is just illusion. The modern illusion today, the numbers are beyond comprehension. Global debt has surpassed $300 trillion, 3 times the world's GDP. That means humanity owes more than it can ever repay. Not to nature, not to each other, but to the same invisible financial elite that's been writing the rules for centuries. Central banks now control interest rates, markets, and currencies with algorithms instead of gold. Digital money, CBDCs, and programmable finance are just the next phase. A system where debt doesn't just control nations, but individuals. Every transaction, every loan, every purchase tracked, taxed, and tied to identity. The illusion is complete. We live in a digital debt matrix that defines value, power, and even freedom itself. The patterns that repeat history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. Every great civilization, Rome, Spain, Britain, America, rose through expansion and collapsed through debt. Empires don't fall because of enemies. They fall because of interest. And now, as inflation rises, currencies weaken, and global inequality reaches record levels, we're seeing the same script play out once again. The rich remain untouchable while everyone else fights over the illusion of wealth. Yes, when money becomes infinite, power becomes priceless. The 3 takeaways first. Debt is not an accident. It's a design. It's a system that ensures the flow of wealth always moves upward. Second, every financial solution we see today, from stimulus to digital currency, is just a modern disguise for the same ancient control mechanism. Third, the only real freedom begins when people understand how money truly works, when we stop treating credit as wealth and start questioning who benefits from our belief in it. The elites don't rewrite history with books. They rewrite it with balance sheets. Every new debt agreement, every bailout, every interest rate decision edits the story of civilization itself. And unless we learn to read between the lines of the illusion, we will remain characters in someone else's economic script. So the next time you hear about national debt, economic growth, or fiscal policy, remember, the numbers you see are not just math. They are mechanisms of memory, control, and power. Because history isn't written by the victors anymore. It's written by the creditors. Conclusion: if this opened your eyes, share it. Subscribe to Finance Illusionist, where we uncover the hidden architecture of money, power, and the systems that shape our world. Because the illusion only works as long as you believe in it.